Hi everyone, I'm Miss Katie from Rockland Public Library and welcome to Wednesday Read Alouds. This month is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, so I thought we would read The Fearless Flights of Hazel Ying Lee. So this is a true story about a Chinese American. So this is a true story about Hazel Ying Lee, and her story is being told today by Julie Leung and illustrated by Kwon. Let's see what happens in The Fearless Flights. Hazel Ying Lee was born fearless. She was not afraid of wind or water, as the old Cantonese saying goes. Little Hazel was always the first to jump into the swimming pool. She would hit the ball the hardest in handball games. Hazel didn't care that she was not allowed in certain parts of town or that she had to carry identification on her at all times. She would run foot races against the boys, pushing her legs to go the fastest. Here she goes, racing all the guys in town. And when Hazel ran out of breath, she would fall back on a soft patch of grass and turn her face toward the sky. Sometimes, on sunny days, a silver plane would streak across the clouds. She wondered what it might be like to move so fast her feet couldn't touch the ground. Can you see that airplane up in the sky? It came as no surprise then that the moment she took her first airplane ride, Hazel Ying Lee knew where she belonged. She delighted in the way the plane rumbled down the runway, vroom, 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 building speed as the engine roared in her ears. The wheels lifted and the wind buoyed the metal wings up. Hazel looked out the window in wonder. When the plane landed back on the runway like a skipping rock, Hazel stepped out with only the horizon in her eyes. Oh, she's found the place where she belongs. I will be a pilot, Hazel declared to everyone who would listen. But it's not ladylike, her mother warned. It was 1932, and less than 1% of pilots were women. But Hazel cared about that least of all. She wanted to do something that no other Chinese American girl had done. Her mother threw her hands up in the air. You're not afraid of anything. Only Hazel had a taste of the sky. Once Hazel had a taste of the sky, she couldn't let go. To pay for flying lessons, Hazel worked as an elevator operator at a department store. That means she pushes the buttons at the elevator to help the customers go up and down. It was one of the few jobs Chinese girls were allowed to have at the time. Invisible jobs, Hazel called them, jobs where you could be ignored. Every day in an airless box, she shuttled shoppers from one floor to the next. When she pulled the lever for the different floors, she smiled and imagined she was moving a plane's throttle instead, up and down and up and down. After work, Hazel chased every chance to get into the pilot seat, where she learned to loop the loop, roll like a barrel, and spin in spirals. In under a year, she earned her flying license. But what could she do with it? Americans didn't want to hire Chinese. And who would hire a Chinese girl pilot? Then, in 1941, World War II reached American shores with the bombing of Pearl Harbor. All available male pilots were called to fight overseas. The U.S. military developed a new program to train women to fly on the home front, the Women Air Force Service Pilots, also known as wasps. Hazel knew this was her chance to become a pilot at last. She signed up right away, becoming the first Chinese-American woman to fly in the U.S. military. Though they were not allowed to fight on the front lines, WASP work could be just as dangerous. Hazel and her fellow WASPs tested planes straight out of the assembly line. Uh-oh. They were the first to fly them before any man did, and often the first to discover malfunctioning defects. So that means they tested airplanes before anyone had ever gone in them. That means some of them were really, really dangerous. They would take the planes up and see if they flew right, if the pieces worked correctly, if the engine worked correctly, and sometimes it didn't, and it could be an extremely dangerous job. But them testing it out helped other people so that there were less injuries later. One day, in the middle of the mission, Hazel's engine cut out mid-flight. The plane sputtered, poop, 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 and began to fall. She relied on her training, crash landing in a Kansas field. A farmer nearby mistook her for a Japanese fighter and chased her, ready to fight. Oh no. Hazel ducked under the wing for safety, and she shouted that she was an American. She was finally able to convince the farmer. "Well, you sure made a pretty landing," he said begrudgingly. Hazel told her story to a few pilots to make them laugh, but her own laughter masked a secret heartache. She wondered, even despite the fearlessness, if she would ever be seen as an American in other people's eyes. When she was in the air, however, none of it mattered. Hazel Ying Lee was one of the few women, even among the WASPs, qualified to fly pursuit planes. As Hazel zoomed across the sky at hundreds of miles per hour, America became a patchwork of colors. Blue mountains melted into green hills and golden plains. Silver rivers split into gray creeks. No one could see her eyes, hair, or skin color when Hazel was thousands of feet above. Up here, people were just tiny specks against a vast land. And inside her cockpit, Hazel felt like a dragon chasing down the sun. She leaned into the wind, pushed her plane to go faster and faster. She looked at the horizon and willed the world to move forward. One afternoon in November 1944, Hazel was helping fly new P-63 planes to Great Falls, Montana. There was a miscommunication in the radio tower, and Hazel's plane collided with another. She died of her injuries 2 days later. Her family and fellow pilots mourned her passing. They wanted to honor her life that was brief, but bold, brave, and bright. Because WASPs were considered citizens at the time, Hazel was not given a military recognition. The cemetery tried to stop Hazel's family from burying her in the spot they wanted. They did not want to bury a Chinese in the whites-only cemetery, not even one that was a hero. But Hazel's family believed in Feng Shui, the Chinese philosophy that one must be in harmony with one's surrounding. Translated, Feng means wind, and Shui means water. Hazel had never been afraid of either, as the Cantonese saying goes, and Hazel deserved so much better than the barriers and the boundaries. The family fought the cemetery rules and wrote a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt to protest. They willed the world to move forward for Hazel, and they won. Today, Hazel Ying Lee is remembered in a place chosen just for her, on a hillside looking over a gentle river water, where the winds blow gently down the slope and beckon you to chase the sky. And if you can see here, this is a picture of her gravestone here, right there, with Hazel looking out over the place that she loved. The end. Great listening, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful week. And remember, you can do anything. And if you can this week, see if you can look into Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage and see what you can learn about the wonderful people who live in our country. See you next week. Bye-bye.